I'm Kathy Grant, City of Lodi, and we have with us today Alina Beckerman from Litterati. Let's put up the slides, I guess, Alina, and we can share with the folks.
All right, everybody see my screen?
Yeah.
All right.
So if the audience doesn't mind, we really want to know who you are and why you're here. So in the chat box, or if you're brave, you can unmute and just tell us who you are, who you work for, whether or not you're a city person or a contractor, or basically why you're here, so that as we go through these slides, we can make sure that we're addressing kind of your perspective. So I'm Kathy Grant, City of Lodi, Watershed Program Coordinator, and we're going to talk about the Litterati app that the city contracted to use last year in order to help us meet the stormwater requirement for doing public outreach for the City of Lodi, especially the garbage, the need to have people become aware of the garbage problem and then engage in actually cleaning up. All right, so Holly Swan, you're from a state university. Interesting. Okay, why are you here? So everybody else, come on, Roya, and if anybody else is out there, let us know who you are so we can be sure to hit you as an audience, your perspective. Anyway, Alina, you want to introduce yourself and tell us who you are?
Absolutely. Thanks, Kathy. So my name is Alina, and I am here representing Litterati. We're an app and a technology platform, and my background is in zero waste. So I've had an opportunity for the last 7 years, non-zero years, to work with litter in cities and to work with waste in cities and to collaborate with leaders around what we can do to decrease the amount of waste we see in the environment, whether it's through live events or now through distributed programs. And that's what we're here to talk about here with Kathy. So the really neat thing was when I entered the picture in November, and this is where we were. So Kathy, I'd love for you to talk a little bit about that, because this precedes my time with Litterati.
Yeah, so this is the March 20th letter that when it came out to the world, to us outreach people, City of Lodi, received this saying basically that people in the water business were considered essential, and that the state had decided not to relax any of the permit requirements for engaging the public, which was a real challenge. For almost 20 years, we've been doing outreach events in person, and so it was easy to satisfy those requirements through coastal cleanup or other things that we were doing, Earth Day cleanups, but take away that ability to meet in public. And I spent the whole last summer trying to find a way to meet the program or the state requirements, and it was the Litterati community that was the most responsive to our needs because of the way they've designed their platform. So why don't we jump to the next slide, I believe. And this is a slide where we had to, it's been a very active, complicated year trying to navigate a program virtually. There was no roadmap at all. So once we were able to, I was able to convince our managers that this was a good idea. Then our second problem to solve was finding the base, finding the people that we could actually work with to do the work of doing these cleanups, and which meant that they had to be cell phone savvy, be able to download an app, and then figure out how to use it. And that took a long time to actually do, but it was through the meetings that we had regularly that we actually tackled those challenges, and I think we were very successful. So Alina, why don't you take to the next slide?
Yeah, and this one is a little bit more about us. So Litterati is an opportunity to work with both community members as well as city and municipal departments, and really understand together what happens. So it's a new platform that we're developing, where we're helping cities really understand what's going on. But it's not just cities that we work with, it's anybody around the world who is curious about understanding what their litter makeup looks like and is curious about how to connect people together. So you can download the app, you can sign up to have your own account, and from there, the world begins to open up in terms of how much litter there is out there on the streets. And we partner with NGOs as well as corporations who are looking to drive change through their programs. So it's not just this one piece of litter that you're picking up, it's the millions of pieces of litter that all come together. And while we want to be focused on the Lodi story, I just really quickly wanted to show you what it all looks like to have the data in your hands. So like I mentioned, Litterati is something that you can download from your mobile app store, and it is also something that you can access on your desktop device once you start collecting a litter and see what it looks like. Cities, corporations, and folks who are our business clients have an opportunity to look at the dashboard in a much more nuanced way, where they can log in and see things that a regular user can't see. They have the opportunity to start challenges and have those challenges featured for local community members. And then they can also do things like send notifications to those folks. And this is where I wanted to pop open the hood really quickly, but if you let me, Kathy,
Yeah, go for
it. Dive in to what I have in our dashboard. So kind of a sneak peek into what's happening with Lodi specifically. So we'll talk about this in more detail, but once everything got started and we were able to ramp things up, over the course of our collaboration together, over 21,000, not yet million, thousand pieces were collected. And in the dashboard, you can actually see by month and by year who contributed, who those folks were, when the litter was collected, and then what type of items were gathered, both by category, object, material, and brand. And there's a lot of really interesting things that you can begin to uncover once you filter all of this data together. And the maps are another part of the story. I actually pulled up the challenge that's currently going on in Lodi for 2021. It started in January, it's going through the end of the year, and it's got an ambitious goal. We'll talk about that in a little bit, but just wanted to zoom in on the map here of Lodi to show that there are all these connected challenges, because the feature challenge is run by the city. And there are about, 38 people who are currently contributing, with more folks connecting. And this is where all the litter is being picked up. So you can really start to zoom in on where people are finding the problem areas. And one of them is here. Someone is focusing on this Walmart parking lot. There are other areas around schools and other business corridors. And then it all comes back to, where does it go? And how does it get back to the watershed? So this is kind of a really neat opportunity for us to be able to collaborate and open our own eyes to how things are connected and how important waterways are and how we get to
Alina,
really get to a better place.
zoom down into the Lodi Memorial Hospital. I thought that was one of the more interesting problems that we were able to. So the idea was that people would download this app and go out and do a cleanup, 10 minutes, 5 minutes, an hour. And then the app records where they're picking up the trash. So you're Beckman Park. So you're going to go north up to the top. And now you're going to go to the left, to the west, Vinewood Park. I got to, okay, then scroll down.
Yeah, well, I think the story is you can kind of see where folks are litter and where they're ending up while finding these large, more challenging issues, and how folks are concentrating, you know, in some of their more familiar areas or familiar parks, or, you know, in parking lots where there are other activities going on. And it's community driven, so it's who's doing what and where. And Kathy, I'm sorry, I don't.
Yeah, you don't know where the hospital is, so
I don't remember the coordinates.
But I think number 4 there, that right in the dead center there, is the hospital. So if you could just drill down on one of those, I think it's interesting where you can actually see a street level photograph of the person who had picked up the trash. So there you go. So evidence of, actually we were able to identify some of the, so when you download this app and you use it, if you don't create an account, we don't know who you are. And so at the beginning of this, we were having students who were downloading the app but not creating an account. And we had teachers on it, we were on a Zoom call, and we were able to actually identify who the students were based on their feet. It was kind of funny. And then the teacher could ask them to actually create an account, and then we were able to know better who was doing what. But yeah, so this is how it works. Did you want to say more about that?
No, that's it. I just, you know, it is anonymized data if folks are concerned with privacy. So you can have an anonymous account, and the data is protected. We do have privacy policies for children. So there are those caveats. And if there are questions about that, we're happy to address them. Just let us know in the chat. But I think that's all I wanted to share. I'm going to go back to the presentation here and to this next slide where this was your introduction to the Litterati app way back when you were not as well versed in all this new technology.
Yeah, this was a new world that we had entered. And so once the city had signed the contract with Litterati and we started to learn how to use this tool, we would encourage people to sign up, like whoever's on this call now could do the same thing, and download the app and have a look around. And then it was through working together actually with teachers and students that we created this more of a crowdsourcing energy. So individuals could do cleanups and not be part of, you know, they can contribute to a challenge, but City of Lodi was interested in a City of Lodi challenge so that we could claim it and report it to the state as part of our outreach. So the next slide, I believe, is where it all happened. So this is really the magic. So we would, every week or so, or every couple of weeks, we would bring in these teachers and a couple of the students, and we would have these sessions where we were really trying to figure out how to do what we were doing. The City of Lodi actually had some masks printed, and we were giving them out to teachers to distribute to the students. And I think the students are actually really looking forward to these meetings. But this is where we problem solved as a group. This is where we heard the stories that Alina will talk to later, but around the Walmart parking lot, the family that would go there on the weekends and for car shows or whatever they were doing there. And it was the high school son that would take off with his grabbers and bucket and his phone and go clean up. And so we're able to see what was going on in that parking lot. And then another teacher here lives near Lodi Memorial Hospital, and she would walk the perimeter of the hospital and would find cigarette butts all over the place, especially at the corner near the storm drains, which she thought that was pretty odd. That a hospital, I guess all the people that work there are people coming in smoking their cigarettes, but there were no cigarette receptacles that were there to be used. So this is a story really to be continued. We've kind of identified hotspots, but have not solved some of those problems. Do you want to go to the next slide?
Yeah, so it was through these meetings that we had the opportunity to learn a little bit more about the young folks that were really excited about change, and share with them what we know about making change happen based on our experiences with cities from the Litterati perspective, and see what inspiration can come. And this was one of those things where one idea leads to someone taking that idea and running with it. And so Kathy, I know that this one is of particular interest because this was one individual making change and collaborating together to really make a difference. And you can see that this is actually that same challenge that I just showed, but this is where it began. So Kathy, maybe you could talk a little bit more about Charlie and then the twins too.
Yeah, so we contracted with Litterati in October, I believe, last year, 2020. And it was very slow going at first because there really is a steep learning curve. It took a while to get everybody up to speed. And then we were working mostly with students and teachers who were, for different reasons, encouraging the use of this app. I think it was the Honor Society at Tokay High was satisfying their community service credits. The other teachers were giving out extra credit. So there was a rhythm to what was happening. There'd be waves of activity. We went into Christmas break, I believe, and Charlie Starr, one of the students from Lodi High, is the one who put up that big challenge for 20,210 pieces. But because it's such a steep learning curve, we realized that we needed a bridge, that the public we needed a quick way to educate the public. And so the two girls actually from Tokay High were part of the Go Green Club there, created this Instagram. I think they made it on Canva, made this graphic, infographic that we were able to push out on Facebook and Instagram, and man, oh man, it just took off from there. And the kids actually started using it more, and the challenge got off and running. So the problem with Charlie is and with all high school students, is they're very busy. And so we have this bursts of activity, and then sports would start, and then a burst of activity, and then something else was distracting them. But I think what we've learned is that as many social media platforms as possible need to be linked in order to push out this app, because that's where people are, especially the young people. That's where the high school students are, and that's how we capture their attention. So
yeah, and that's a perfect segue to kind of how this continued to grow. So we continue to collaborate throughout the year. Now we're in the end of September, beginning of October. We're brainstorming about Halloween challenges, potentially seeing how we can get teachers back involved now that the school year has started. But over this time, we've had a number of programs, even during the summer, that were successful. And that's what contributed to the growth of that number. So I think that 3,000 that you just saw on the previous slide, that was from earlier in the year when things first got started. It's continuing to grow, and I anticipate that we will meet and exceed that goal, just like we did with a lot of the other challenges that we've had with Lodi. So think of a challenge as like a project, not necessarily a problem, an opportunity to really engage your community. And the way that it was done with Lodi was really beautiful, because they couldn't gather as groups of kids like they were used to with teachers. They had to connect two at a time and go out in the field and collect litter together, but find ways to spread the word too. So someone would go out on a weekend, someone else would go out on a weekday, and in the end, it's this really beautiful thing at the end of the year that gets to happen, and data that filters into the dashboard for Lodi. So much so that it is actually making the front page news. Kathy, maybe you could talk a little bit about how these articles came to bear.
Yeah, so fast forward, this is last spring, where we kind of had the car. We knew how to drive the car now, and the kids were doing really well, especially after Earth Day, and made the Lodi News Sentinel our newspaper. One of our team members actually worked for the Sentinel, which really helps. She was part of our early onboarding meetings, so she understood how the app worked and understood the importance of promoting our work through her work at the Lodi News Sentinel. So whenever we would, have a challenge would end and we had numbers to look at, we would pitch it to her and she would get it out to the public. So on the left, there's a picture there of the AmeriCorps watershed ambassadors showed up in Lodi last year, and I reached out to them and asked if they would like to join a Litterati team. And it turns out that in order to qualify, they had requirements in their program where they had to do some outreach themselves, but because of COVID, they couldn't do anything in person. So they actually did a cleanup at Lodi Lake amongst themselves. They brought in a bunch of their colleagues, AmeriCorps folks, and they were out there for the day doing a cleanup using the app. And it was really interesting, actually. They worked with Alina before they went to the cleanup and learned how to use the app. And then the day of the cleanup, they had to, I think there was a core group of 5 or 6 people that were the Lodi folks who worked with Alina, figured out how to use the app, created the challenge for that weekend. And then Saturday, when the cleanup happened, they then had to turn and show the rest of the folks that cleaned up how to use the app. And then they also, on that same day, which is kind of another Litterati story, Nick, one of the Litterati folks, showed us a couple months ago pictures of a fishing tackle dispenser that he had seen in another place, because at Lodi Lake in Lodi, fishing tackle is a problem. So part of the work that the ambassadors did that day was to install 5 or 6 of these fishing line receptacles around the lake, which was really cool. So I'm seeing a question from Holly. How can anyone start a challenge? How does that work? Do you buy a subscription or something? So I'll throw that potato to you, Alina, and then you can explain. That's a good question.
Yeah, absolutely. So yes, challenges can be started by anyone. You just navigate to challenges, join challenges, and then in there you can create your own challenge and then share the code. In order to have more access to the city data, you would need a subscription. So I think that that's an opportunity to collaborate with us, but to test things out, you can first download the app, sign up for an account, start your own challenge, invite others, and see how you get some cool info first. But in order to see everything together in one view, like your challenge data plus someone else challenge data and so on, to get all of those together, that's where the subscription comes in. And that's how some of these stories are built. So like Kathy was talking about the front page news, there were a lot of other stories that are here, and it was all because the community came together, and we were able to get a lot of insight once we dove into some of these. So Kathy discussed the cigarette butts, and that was an eye-opening thing that we were able to identify. There were also water bottles that are a curious bit of the puzzle. What's happening with water bottles at Tokay High? So it's a question for our teachers coming up. And then Walmart, we also talked about very briefly, but all of these stories are what happened when you crowdsource data. And this one about the waste hauler was one that particularly caught my attention, because it's an example of how a community member using the app brings about a lot of change, how one individual that's part of a larger program can do something really impactful. And Kathy, if you're not too reticent about talking about this one, I think
it's a great story. So one of the Lodi residents who goes for a walk every day was letting us know that she was picking up trash on a busy street, Turner Road in Lodi, and day after day she's picking up all these little bits and pieces of plastic. When she realized that, I guess you always ask yourself after you pick up trash for a while, like, where is this stuff coming from? Well, it turns out it was coming from the waste management trucks on their way in and out of the transfer station. They turn the corner and the stuff flies off, ends up in the street, gets run over, and now you've got 1,000 pieces of a broken truck. And that's what this woman was picking up. So when she reported to us what she had learned, I called my supervisor and he reached out to the other side of the house. We were sort of in silos in the city. He reached out to the waste management side of the house, and they called waste management. And well, it turns out that waste management was supposed to be running sweepers along this corridor more frequently than they had been. And so because of what this woman had reported, it kind of kicked the gear back into, how do you say, kick the machinery back into gear, and the street began to get cleaned up again. So it's really about citizen scientists or observation. It's that kind of solved a problem that we were really not even aware of. And it was through this network that Litterati had created that kind of allowed us to see that, okay, we have a great help center with articles about how to use Litterati. Here's an article. So someone, oh, that's Alina. Yeah, so it's really, and I do want to say, as part of these stories from the city's perspective, you know, we've done, in fact, we did another coastal cleanup this year, and I've done many Earth Day and other cleanups over the years. 18 years of cleanups, and they've always been in the same place. They've always been at Lodi Lake along the river. By using this app, we're able to now get all over town. So that's really powerful. So these stories, they wouldn't have happened at Lodi Lake. I mean, most of the people at Lodi Lake that are dropping trash are a known quantity. They're visitors to the park, whoever they are, doing behavior that's pretty obvious. But by moving through towns, through neighborhoods, through parks, there's a whole lot of other stories and a whole lot of other problems that now we're becoming aware of, and looking for solutions, looking for more partners, really. So anyway, you want to move to the next slide?
Yeah, so the next piece of this puzzle is tying it back together with what we're doing here for Stormwater Week, and it's about your MS4 permit. And this is something that we are excited to collaborate with Lodi on, because it's something big that cities are required to do, and it's something that previously really necessitated doing outreach in person, cleanups in person, and getting the data in person with pen and paper. And I'm really happy to say that it sounds like our collaboration has led to a better solution. And because we're continuing to partner together and iterate on our processes and iterate on our product, we're able to build something that's better and more bespoke for MS4 reporting, and that is coming. So just a quick teaser of what's up next in 2022. It's hopefully a solution for getting data like this that you see on the right-hand side more quickly surfaced in the dashboard that we have here. And what we're able to show, you can see here, these are screenshots from the dashboard, and what we hope to summarize for you is something like this, where you have an easily accessible view of data. But Kathy, in terms of where you're at, this is data that you're actually gathering on your own. So I'm curious to know a little bit more about the way that previously you were doing MS4 reporting and some of the insights that you're able to hopefully more
Yeah.
easily get.
Yeah, so in fact, I'm doing the old-fashioned way alongside of Litterati in these few weeks since we've finished the September 18th coastal cleanup. So it used to be that we would have people come to Lodi Lake and they would go around and pick up trash, bring it back in, and then sort and count it. And then I would have to take those numbers from their data cards and enter it into an Excel spreadsheet. From those numbers, we were able to report to the state, whatever, you know, we would compare year to year, and there were metrics. Moving to Litterati, the tool does the work for you. I have to get it straight. I was just talking with Alina about using this platform can be challenging. You really have to, I think, takes time to figure it out, but it's verifiable, which I appreciate. So that somebody else can get back in there and double check numbers of what you're coming up with. But it can tell us how many pieces we picked up, how many challenges there have been, how many people have participated, what the #1 offender was, cigarette butts, of course, or fast food restaurants that have, I think, McDonald's was the #1 littered brand. So I know in other cities, they take it, like San Francisco has taken all of this information to the next step, which is to kind of reach out to the folks that are where the trash is coming from. And I know they've banned certain, what have they banned? Straws and other things that have shown up in the reporting that were a problem. I don't see us doing that, but it is good for the kids to see, you know, the high school students that are a part of our meetings, they actually can see the problems, where trash is, and then in their classes and in their with their teachers, they're actually discussing, especially plastics, because that's a worldwide problem, and it's a lot of it's coming from us cities and upstream. You know, the rivers are draining out to the, you know, to the San Francisco Bay and beyond, and this really helps them see the whole town, which I appreciate. So next slide.
Yeah, and this is where we get to the part where we talk about how it all comes together, and yeah, I'll defer to you for this one because I think the story is really with Lodi.
Yeah. So this is you know, I don't know if you guys could imagine, well, we have spent hours trying to distill what has gone on in the last year into whatever it is, 17 PowerPoint slides. But the image that keeps coming to my mind is that there are 2 tracks going on. One is the community involvement track, which takes a while to get going because the city really needs to communicate to the public why it's doing what it's doing, how to do what it needs to do, and then the importance of what they're doing, but then also needs to report back to them what we're learning. And then the second track is us reporting to the state and, you know, satisfy our stormwater report, but also reporting back to the public. So the public is now able to see more easily what they are actually doing. So I'm not being clear, but imagine when I would do a coastal cleanup and I would collect data and I would enter it into my Excel spreadsheet. Well, it lives in my computer. It's not accessible to the public. They don't know how many. I may put out a press release and I'll tell you that there were 1,200 cigarette butts collected or whatever. But then that press release disappears and the public can't access any of that information unless they find that one press release. But through Litterati, they're able actually to, it's a living a snapshot of what's happening now. It's real time, which is wonderful, and it makes it more interesting for the public to engage in. So as I would say on the slide, it really is a win-win because we are meeting state requirements. We're putting a living tool in the hands of the public and trying to create this community, which is actually what the state permit requirement is. You're not you not only have to do outreach to the public, but you're supposed to be creating this community, involved community, when they call it a committee or whatever, but it's just, you're trying to engage the public, not only change their behavior, but bring them on board as problem solvers to the problem, which is win-win. So
I love it.
next slide. Yeah.
And that's us. I'm putting a link here for Litterati City programs, and our contact info is on the next page. And at this point, I think it's just about your questions and anything that might be out there as a pressing item on your mind about stormwater and what our collaboration meant to you. So questions from the audience, if any.
Yeah, I'd love for you guys to unmute and engage, because I want to know what you're thinking. Alina and I were.
I'll fight.
Okay, good. Holly, yay. Hi.
Hi, yeah, so I'm from Chico State. I work in the Environmental Health and Safety Department, and I am the Environmental Program Manager, so I do the stormwater program here. We do have a non-traditional permit. But this was actually ironically just brought to my attention by our Associated Student Sustainability Group. And they actually have a challenge going right now called the Clean Chico Challenge. And they're trying to get 1,000 pieces picked up on campus and around the community for their Sustainability Day later on this month, or later on.
Great. That's great.
But I'm interested in it as a, it's hard to do public outreach, quote unquote, to a university.
Yeah.
It's oftentimes the permit language for a university is kind of like fitting a square peg into a round hole, because we're not a municipality. But I still try to come up with creative ways to engage with the campus community, and I think this will be one that I use in the future for sure. Yeah,
I would encourage you to get a subscription, not just, I don't know how your people did it, but if it's just a challenge, there's you can't get in the back door and actually see what's going on and learn from what's going on, and make changes on the campus. I mean, that's what a sustainability club should be all about, is their problem solving. So,
yeah, I mean, right now they literally will collect the trash and then sort it, and then do the whole like spreadsheet, this is how many cigarette butts we found versus clothing items versus, water bottles and that sort of thing. So a little more archaic and more gross.
Yeah, well, yeah, but that's a good first way to start. It's really powerful to do that for a day or two. But then you have to figure out, well, how can we eliminate water bottles? I don't remember which, I think it's in Oregon. The university actually gives out they banned plastic bottles on the campus, and they give out each student, when they enter as a freshman, they get a college branded water bottle, refillable water bottle. So it's ideas like that you can learn from. Well, what are the problems on your campus and what are the solutions? Well, maybe it's a higher level, it will take the campus something to take them making some changes.
Yeah, I think unfortunately for us, a lot of our litter comes from the upstream user. And obviously a lot of it does have to do with the increasing homeless population in town that do use, so we have a creek going through our campus. And then above it is the city of Chico, and below it is the city of Chico. So we only have a little, 3/4 of a mile of the creek. So we don't see a lot of litter on campus as far as on sidewalks, walkways, lawns, streets. We have more of a in-creek litter problem.
Interesting.
Yeah. So
homeless.
I don't know how many changes we could make for that one, unfortunately.
Yeah.
I wish I had more pull on that, but I don't.
Interesting. I'm glad the students are using the app. That's great.
Yeah. Yeah, I just checked it out. They got 286 or something like that so far of their 1,000.
All right. That sounds good. And so the students have actually created accounts so you can see all the data?
I don't really know much about it. I just joined the challenge just as we were on this thing, just to see. And it does give me a number of how many pieces have been picked up. It says 286 out of 1,000, which is their goal. And there's 22 participants, but that's about all I can.
Okay.
Oh, I can see where too. Like
yeah.
The map. So I don't really know what they have as far as subscription goes or anything. I'm not sure.
Okay. Interesting. Well, thank you for being bold and unmuting.
No worries.
Yeah, and Holly, like the social justice issue with litter and homeless encampments is one that we're seeing throughout the Bay Area. I'm based in San Francisco, and this came up with some of our other local city clients and nationally too. And it's a question of how do you plan successfully to do a cleanup without creating additional challenges with an already kind of housing insecure group and one that is relying on city infrastructure. So questions for me come up around, what are the waste receptacles in the area? How often are they cleaned? What is the communication and the community outreach to those groups? Kind of collaborate with them to work around their housing issues and address it in other ways. So
I forget what town it was. God, it might have been Lodi too. Actually, now that I think about it, maybe it's not. But a cash for trash campaign. So individual can bring in a plastic bag full of trash and they get a $25 gift card so they can go get food at Safeway. And that was specifically for homeless individuals. And I thought that was a really cool idea because it incentivizes them, but I forget what town. It was somewhere in California. Maybe it wasn't Lodi. Maybe I'm wrong. But
yeah, no, it's not Lodi. So I've worked with I'm Lodi. I'm city of Lodi. I've worked with the homeless for years. When it was a small problem before the 2008 surge of homelessness in California. And in the olden days, before that time, the homeless seemed to be more of a community. They were a known group, mostly alcoholics. There wasn't much drug use. And we used to work with those homeless a lot and do cleanups with them and give them little certificates and then feed them afterwards or whatever. But then along came the surge and the numbers were and the drug use is just a huge problem. And to answer Erin's question, does Lodi have a plan to deal with litter from the homeless camps? That's out of my, Public Works is not dealing with that problem except when asked. And I don't know that there's actually a plan. I do know that they go through as much as they can and clean up. But our problem is some of the largest camps are on Caltrans property. And we can't just walk on and clean up. It's ongoing, it's everywhere. And we don't encourage kids to go down. We used to do cleanups down at those homeless camps, so we don't know, I don't go near them anymore. But I wouldn't use a Litterati app in a homeless camp. We'll be there all day. There's just too much trash. But yeah, we're actually building a homeless shelter in Lodi with, I think it's federal funds, and so that should help some of the homelessness that we have. It will also will make us able to enforce some of the laws. You can't. It's a complicated problem, but you can't effectively deal with the homeless without having a shelter for them. So that you just kind of have to leave them be, and that's where we are. So anyway. So other visitors, who are you? Luann, who are you? Unmute, we have a few minutes.
Oh,
yeah.
Well, I'm from Travis Air Force Base.
Really?
So we have slightly different issues, no homeless.
Wow, Travis, but you're non-traditional?
Yes.
Huh, so how do you meet your permit requirements for PIPP?
Well, it's been challenging. Originally, we met it because the commanding officer on their own decided they wanted to do cleanup campaigns, and they just ordered everybody to clean up every quarter. This is really easy. The volunteer portion was that although the military were mandated, they had a schedule and they had an area where they had to go to, but non-military could volunteer at the same time. And we did have volunteers pitching in. So we also did green waste at the same time. So people would go around cutting down things, cleaning up litter and stuff that was green waste. So we separated out between trash and green waste. It was actually quite successful when it was ongoing. The only problems we were having was tracking how well we were doing, because we couldn't track the amounts. Basically, everybody threw everything into the closest dumpster, and that was it.
And that was it.
It was only the green waste that we could literally track because there was nowhere to put it. So we set up a special station. We tried setting up a special station for trash, but it didn't work. Everybody went to the closest dumpster.
So where was your trash coming from? I can't see military people dropping trash. So
you get a lot of wind-blown trash coming onto the base. So you'll get bags, papers, stuff like that. So where a lot of times you'll run into this stuff either where it's gotten caught into shrubs or it's blown around the perimeter fence.
Right.
So around the perimeter road, for instance, you'll see trash and so on. So you just have to dig it out. It's with the winds there, all you have to do is open the trunk of your car or your door. Right. If you aren't careful about where you put loose stuff, it'll just pick up anything loose and there it is flying all over the place.
Yeah, you've got winds over there. So how often would you have these cleanups?
Once a quarter.
They were very,
yes, they were very successful. We also have a base cleanup team. So you could call in areas. So we have surveys going on that check where the litter is coming from and the types of litter. And then they can report to us where the hotspots are basically and what we're getting. So we have particular areas that are popular for illegal dumping, let's say. People are people.
Right.
So we'll get tires, batteries, mattresses, all kinds of stuff that will sometimes appear either next to a dumpster or just on a street that would be a dead end as a local spot. Sometimes it could be contractors, sometimes it could be the people. We try doing education and stuff. We have installed cameras at places so we can catch, where the really bad areas were. But that's been doing actually really, really well. We had stopped when COVID started, but we will probably go back to that again. So we haven't had as many cleanup events.
I see. So could you see Litterati being used?
Potentially. Like I said, our biggest issue is tracking. Right now, the only method we have of tracking is just looking at green waste and saying, well, we hope the trash amounts are the same. The problem is we have large recycling programs constantly ongoing. So our trash, even if we're generating more, our trash levels are dropping. So, so we can't track it unless we track an individual person. It's something we might look into to see if we could do that. But so far, our best tracking method has been the actual surveys.
How do you do a survey?
We have people come out and they walk the streets throughout the base. and they go everywhere where there's storm drains and so on in the streets, and they look for trash, and then they take pictures and they put it on a map and give us data. This is a year by year. We do this twice a year, and it gives us a good snapshot of what areas are generating trash and what types of trash are being generated, because we have the visual record when you see the trash. Surprisingly enough, the schools have been good around their area on trash.
So you have schools on your base?
Yes.
You do.
But the schools have been very good about trash. It's actually contractors working at the schools that have been big trash generators. So we've had to come down on them a lot.
No, a contractor is a teacher, or a contractor is a building maintenance person?
Well, a contractor, one of the schools was being renovated and additional buildings being built. So they had temporary structures that were being changed over to permanent and other projects. So you bring in contractors to do a lot of ground disturbance and construction. However, one of the biggest problems we noticed, which is why we had to increase inspections, lunchtime, fast food.
Really? Wow.
Throw trash all over the place. It's amazing.
Wow, from adults. That's surprising. Wow. So there's enough trash receptacles and all that. It's just the lack of caring.
Laziness, I call it.
Laziness. Yeah, wow.
Of course, if we then went out, once we got notice of this, if we went out and hit them up on it, they were good about education and correcting it after the fact. But we had a number of different contractors coming in, and some were good, some were not. That's just the way it is.
Yeah. Well, one of the points that Lena and I hover over it is that I think there's a need for more partners, more community partners, big, like those contractors. The company needs to be involved, or the Lodi Memorial Hospital needs to be involved. Walmart needs to be involved, so that they can see it from another perspective, see the problem actually, and kind of join forces for social change. Wow. Yeah.
We've been very lucky because for the military and most of the long-term tenants on base, they're very big on cleanup because we have to be around an airport.
Right.
So they're very strong on the importance of keeping flying bits of trash from being generated. But you still, we don't actually have that much trash, but you still have stuff that's blown on base. You still have things happen where people aren't careful, or perhaps they forgot to cover a dumpster or something, and we catch it after the fact.
Right. And then there's always those raccoons. Interesting. Another world. What's the square mileage on that base?
Oh, I don't have it by memory.
It's a big place, though.
Yes.
Interesting. Wow. Well, thank you for unmuting and sharing your perspective. Very different from the cities, but human beings are the common thread through all this. Well, we are at 2:40. So is there anybody else? Erin, did you want to say anything? Are you still there?
Yes, ma'am. I'm still here. I'm just enjoying the conversation.
From your perspective, you have nothing to add. Don't you think there should be a WGR challenge?
Certainly to consider. What I noticed is growing up as a child, there was a prevalent understanding that we need to keep the place clean and keep trash going, and there was a social consciousness to keep things clean. That doesn't seem to be as prevalent now as it was when I was growing up, and I think we need to double down on education, and this app would probably be a great way to do that.
Yeah, I agree. Starts at the family level though, but yeah, we're there. We're trying to engage those kids.
Well, I mean, we, my family, we've done hosting Japanese exchange students, and in Japan, and when we're talking to several of them, that place is pristinely clean.
Yeah.
And they don't have a lot of trash cans. They basically just keep it and they throw it away at home.
Yeah.
And we come here and we're kind of embarrassed to take these kids some places because people are just so slobby, and it's like, you know, that's not the way I was raised, but a lot of people just don't seem to have that same mindset.
Yeah.
And it's amazing how it is possible to educate a populace on just common sense things like picking up trash or throwing your trash in. You know, I've seen people just have an attitude of just throw it down, and yeah, that's something that needs to be. Hopefully, we can just do more education and hopefully influence people to do the right thing.
Well, awesome. This workshop has been great, and I literally just downloaded the app so I could start using it around our office and around where I live. So I'm excited about it. And if you want to send this video recording to anyone that you know, it will be posted on our website probably within about 24 hours. But a huge thank you to Kathy and Alina. This has been very informative, super cool, and I'm really excited about it.
Yeah, and thank you. And if anybody hears this that's from Lodi, please contribute to the Charlie's challenge. Help him reach his goal by the end of December and keep Lodi beautiful. So
Perfect.
thank you, thank you, WGR. I appreciate that you do this every year.